goes on in this world, but accepting the things that are happening is the best way. You know, we all want things to go our own way, right? Shishnoshta sukadukada, agapayino nityastam, titikshava bharata. Anyone heard that before? O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Skyna Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So what qualities do we see here? Can anybody see what qualities are there? Which one?
Number, verse number.
214. What qualities do we see in this verse? Tolerance is one. What else? See, each of these qualities can help. What else is there? It may be an austerity to tolerate the heat and the cold. The other one is acceptance. Sometimes it's difficult to tolerate, but if we just accept that's the way it is. It's like right now it's October. Can we fight that? What if you go to America? Now I fight the winter season because I go to South Africa. Prabhupada sent me there in 1972 with the Swami and he left me alone. But January, February, and December there are summer. So if I go there then and come back to India in March, and then I go back to America in April, I get all the summer months. You know, here we call this warm. When it's 35 degrees, that's warm. When it's 5 degrees, that's cool. When it's 50, that's hot. We don't call 35 or 36 hot here, do we? That's warm, isn't it? In Vrindavan, 45 is hot, and 50 is very hot. And they say it's not hot because it's dry heat. But that's not true either. That's true at 30, right? Say, oh, it's 30, but it's not hot, it's dry heat. So if we learn to tolerate them, and maybe we don't totally enjoy them, but we can tolerate them, and even if we can't totally tolerate them, then at least we can accept this is the way it is. Because if we don't accept things the way that they are, the way Krishna has given us, we're out of touch with reality. We find that in the mode of ignorance, we're stuck in the past. In the mode of future, we're stuck, in the mode of passion, we're stuck in the future. So people are stuck between the past and the future, and what do they miss out on? And what's happening right now, the past or the future? Which one? The present, yes. It was a trick question, neither one of them. The future's not here yet, and the past is gone. So if I'm worried so much about the past and the future, I miss out on what's actually going on here now. Do you take prasadam here, or do you go back to the Balaram Hall?
Here.
Oh, okay. Can I take prasadam with you? We'll talk there? Okay. Since my name means Ksudy, Ksudy is the son of Krishna and Mitra Vinda, but Ksudy also means hungry, so don't give me little. I have a fast metabolism. I have a weight problem. If I don't eat a lot, I start losing weight. Some people hate me for this, but that's their problem. When people are upset with us and others, we just realize that that's their personal problem, and we don't have to take part in it. You know, these are some of the austerities that are there. We'll try to go through some of these in the order of the Gita, because Krishna put them that way, and we'll give an emphasis on a few things. And we'll have a test at the end. I'll ask a few people to say a few things. And Krishna mentions some austere things here in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Who's read the 19th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Raise your hand. Sometimes they raise their hand. You know what that means? They read none of it. It's like an ocean without shores. People say, oh yes, I know all of that. I said, even 19th chapter? Oh yes, yes. There's always something more to know. Once we think we know it all, then we're missing out on something. So here Krishna mentions a few verses. We won't read the Sanskrit. In the 4th chapter, 21st verse, Krishna says, some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. Some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. It's the kind of austerity. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis. That's pretty hard to get. What does unadulterated mean? It's not mixed with anything else, right? They're solid brahmacharis. They have those here. Do Indian movies talk about brahmacharis? They must have done in one, because when I was here in 71, there was a billboard for a movie called Ek Nari, Ek Brahmachari. So there was something about brahmachari. But Indian movies were spoiled for me. You know why? Sorry. We went with Prabhupada to do an engagement at J. Om Prakash's house. And he was the biggest movie producer in India. He produced that movie, Hati Merasati, that everyone was raving about. He says, I'll tell you the truth. Indian movies are silly because they're ready to kill each other and they break for a dance and they come out with the pom-poms and do a dance, right? Whereas in real life, if I'm ready to kill you, do we break for a dance? So I thought, if he's the acharya of Indian movies and he thinks they're silly, after that, how many Indian movies did I see? 0, because he ruined it for me. But he's the one that would know, because it's all about the entertainment factor. But some of them don't look entertaining. We were somewhere, there was a television show and the people are sitting on the couch talking. It might be more exciting to talk to actual people than just sitting on the couch talking to people. Doesn't seem like it's worth spending the time to watch. Some of them, I think the commercial is more exciting. But this we don't call an austerity. So the next austerity it mentions here, some of these we do. So the unadulterated brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the controlled mind. Others, regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. So what does it mean to sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the controlled mind? What does that mean? It's not rhetorical. What does that mean? What does it mean? We're sacrificing the hearing in the fire of the controlled mind. So what does it mean?
It means that controlled mind is like a fire, and the hearing we offer to that controlled
The hearing. How do we control the mind?
by hearing.
By hearing what we're saying. It's like watering the plant. If I go right up to it and pour water directly on the root, if I throw it across the room, I may get some. Any kind of chanting is good. But if you're chanting and going, Hare Krishna, boy, that's an interesting TV show. Oh, hello, on the phone? Is that, sometimes I drive a car and I get on the computer and I do rounds, but not at the same time. Correct? The multitasking, something has to become first, because the brain has something called the reticular regulator. That's why if there's a fire, the alarm goes wah, 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 because it has to make you concentrate that this is the most important thing. So if I'm chanting and I think, well, I wonder what's on the internet, then the mind says, okay, chanting goes to the back burner. So should we check the internet? Yes, but at a particular time. Sometimes I write it in a book. You say, do you write in the book so that you can remember the things you have to do? I said, no, I write them so I can forget it. Because I open the book at the appropriate time. They say that all life is a matter of timing. And that's why we do the important things first. First we do Mangalartik and the chanting, and then we offer, when we're chanting, we should be hearing that. That's the austerity in the controlled mind. The other things can wait till later. So for chanting, thinking Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and chanting the words correctly. This one devotee was chanting and he was about to die. And the 2 Yamana Dutas came to get him. He says, you can't take me, I'm a devotee. And he went back to chanting. And they came back again. He says, how come you came to get me? He says, well, the one Yamaduta says, I'm Nish Nish, and this is Na Na, and you keep calling us by going Nish Nish, Na Na, Nish Nish, Na Na. Like if there's a word that's like, see in Mumbai, you know, some of the Indian words are, you say it a little differently, just like if you write ra, it looks like sh, or sh, like you don't write it correctly. So if you don't say the words, it means something different. Like we chant, Shri Guru Charana Padma. Someone was singing, Shri Gauro Charana. Now what does that mean? Shri Gauro Charana. Cows for sale, 25 pice, right? That's a quarter of a rupee. They'll be at your door, right? They don't use 25 pice often, do they? It's a quarter of a rupee. But if you're singing Sri Gauro Charana, it sounds like they're singing Santara Santara Mosambi. It sounds like you're selling cows for 25 pice, doesn't it? Because that's what you're saying. So if you don't say it correctly, you might get a different result. So we can remember it by saying it. Now for me, I find it goes better if I go faster because I force it in. If I go Hare Krishna, then there's time for other things. But if I'm chanting fast, then I don't have the ability to let something else come in, and I can look at pictures. And this is the austerity, but just because it's an austerity doesn't mean that it's not worth it. I was in Paris, France in 1970, and the French boys opening and shutting the windows to let the snow in. I said, what are you doing? He said, c'est une austerity. And I said, isn't it austere enough that we have no heat and no electricity and it's snowing? And I said, okay, Krishna, I'll make you a deal. Be careful of praying for something, you might get it. I said, Krishna, if you get me out of this cold, I promise never, ever to complain about heat, ever. 3 days later, a letter came from Prabhupada that said, please send 3 devotees to India. So I was off. And we went to London. We got on the Afghan Airways DC-3. On the way here, I told a pilot, yes, I came on the DC-3. That's a turboprop, which the turboprop is a jet, but it is a propeller. He says, no, that's not even a turboprop. It's just a prop. This plane went from London to Paris, to Rome, to Athens, Greece, Cairo, Beirut, Tehran, Kabul, and then finally to Delhi. And it's going rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. This is an old plane even back then. We get to fly on the full jets. And some people think it's austere. But a lot of it means what we're getting for it. But we don't create new austerities. We do austerities that help us in Krishna's service. In May and June, you don't open the door to let the snow in here, do you? Do you? You're not going to get any snow in May and June. If you get snow at all, it will be in January. Probably not even then, but if you do, but you'll have cold air, right? Here it ranges between 5 and 50 degrees. You go somewhere like by the equator where my daughter lives in Bali, Indonesia, it ranges between 24 and 34 all year long. That's not much of a change, is it? Whereas their cold can be very cold. So we don't manufacture a new austerity. We don't, like some of the yogis used to sleep on a bed of nails. Do we do that? Is that mentioned in Bhagavad Gita? Only a few things are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So the austerities can be sacrifices. And what does Krishna say of sacrifices? What am I? What is it?
I am the chanting of the holy name.
Yes, and what kind? Japa. Krishna, see these, we didn't just come up with these. Krishna mentions about this japa. And we don't just decide, maybe offering food would be an interesting thing to do. Krishna mentions this, patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhakta prayachati. So it may be an austerity to do it, to make sure not to taste it, and to let Krishna eat it first, instead of us just wanting to eat it. But it's not a big austerity because it makes us feel happy to do it. So let's see about some of these other austerities. Where were we here? So the householders offer the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Let's see here. That means that household life is a license for sense gratification, but they practice some restraint. Sometimes that's even harder. It's like they say for people that have the problem with alcohol, it's easier just not to drink it at all. If you want to make them suffer, you give them one drink and then no more. That's harder to do than it is to not do it at all. Now, why is that true? Wouldn't it be easier to take a moderate amount? They say everything in moderation. Is that true? It's not true, everything in moderation? Some people say everything in moderation. I said, oh, so if I serve you a moderate amount of dog stool for breakfast, you'll be happy? That defeats the theory, everything in moderation. But the trouble is, for many people, if you have a particular proclivity in a mode, if they put the alcohol or the drug in their system, now their body is craving it. If they're thinking about it, it's just a mental idea. It's like a difference of thinking of jumping off the roof and doing it. The people who jump off a bridge, and some of them jump like in a river and they don't die, when they jump off the bridge, what is the first thing they think? What's that? I should not have done that. But once you've done it, it may be too late, right? We have to think. You can't just do it. Sometimes with the films, you can make it go backwards, but we can't do that in life. When I'm in a dream and I don't like it, I go backwards to the dream where it was and I change it. But we can't do that in real life. I shouldn't have done that. I said that when I was a child. I had a teddy bear, and I put it in the toilet, and I flushed it down. It made a big problem. My mother had always told me, as long as you come tell me what you do, you're not in trouble. So I said to my mother, I shouldn't have ought to done that. And she says, that's okay, you told me, but my grandmother was not very happy as the water was coming out everywhere. And I said I shouldn't have done that. So when we're honest about it. So is it an austerity to be honest? Yes. Either that or we have to be austere enough. If you don't want to tell people things, then maybe it's better than you don't do them. You think, if I'm going to be honest, okay, tomorrow I'm going to put on the internet the activities I did today. Like put on the activities I did yesterday. Some are maybe a little strange, like having the tube down my throat, but none of it would be strange to put out there. You know, we think of the austerity of this with honesty. If the things I do, can I tell everyone about them? Then is it, you know the way you can stop people from finding things out about you? You know how? You tell them first. If you tell them first, they can't find it out. It comes up front. So let's see what other austerities we have here. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. That's like you're doing deity service or sewing for the deities or book distribution or offering the functions of the senses in the fire of the controlled mind. We're doing it in service. The next verse, having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga, the eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. They sacrifice this is good to give in charity, especially if people are working, thinking I give 25% or half to a spiritual cause, then they're doing their work for Krishna. If they're doing it just for themselves, it's something different. And we shouldn't think of ways of cheating Krishna. We shouldn't think, Krishna, give me a big amount. And if I get the big amount, then I'll share half with you. The one person went and he prayed to the deity of Balaji. He says, my dear Lord Balaji, I'll make you a deal. You know, some people say, yes, I love God. Every time I need something, I ask God for it. It's like, you're my best friend, because whenever I need money or a ride or work done on my house, I call you. So whenever I need something, I ask God. The one comedian, George Carlin, must have gotten this from Prabhupada, because he said, the thief is praying, God, please make sure the shop is unlocked so I can get in. And the shopkeeper is thinking, please, God, make sure the shop is locked so no thief can get in. And God is supposed to be confused by conflicting prayers. He said, but what is the use of being God if you don't know what to do until somebody instructs you with their prayers, as if God doesn't know, okay, I have another suggestion for you. Here's what you need to do. So do you think God is really impressed by that? That he has to wait for you to ask him what to do? He's not impressed. So the person prayed to the deity, if I can win the 1 crore of rupees in the lottery, he says, I'll give you half of it. No, I'll make it easier. He says, if I can win 2 crores of rupees in the lottery, I'll give half of it. So he plays the lottery and he wins 1 crore. And he says, my dear Lord Balaji, I thank you so much for helping me win this lottery. But I have only one question to ask you. Why did you take your half out first? So that's the way it's funny. These girls in Bali, Indonesia were trying to date some of the Hindu boys. And she took the last, and said, they always want to offer something to their God. She says, well, I took the last half of my beer and says, here, we'll offer this to your God. And he wasn't very happy. I says, well, number one, you don't offer something you've taken first. And number two, you don't offer beer. So no, of course they weren't happy with it. You have to offer something you haven't taken, and you have to find out what they like, right? I'll offer you the fire. And I set fire to your dhoti. I'm offering you the fire. And I set fire to it. Now you're on fire. Do you like my offering? We have to find out if it's pleasing. So we don't try to cheat Krishna in this way. Or by studying the Vedas. This is another austerity. We study the Vedas. Then others are inclined to the process of breath restraint, to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing and incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others curtailing the eating process. I'm not ready for that one. Offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. Of all these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. Knowing the meaning of sacrifice, they become cleansed. This is good something here, is to know the cost to value ratio, right? You know what that means? That if you give 1,000 rupees for something that's worth 2,000, it's a good cost of value. The value is more than the cost. But if they want to pay you they want to charge you 10,000 rupees for something that's only worth 1,000, it isn't worth it. And to know the cost to value ratio of things, just like people are going to buy land, you know, and they're tricky in Vrindavan. I know someone that wanted to buy land here. They wanted to buy like a 2-acre piece. And at the time, the people says, oh, right on the Parikama Marg, they says, oh, well, we're selling this one for 5 crores. I said, it's in escrow for that? They said, no, that's what we want. I said, the same piece next door, same size, right on the Parikama, just sold for 3 crore. So how does yours become worth 5? People just pick a figure. The fact that the others sold for 3 crore, that pretty much establishes the value. But people think they can just put a price on. They call this the PFA method of appraisal. You just pull a price from the air. I think I'd like 5 crores for that. Might only be worth 2, right? So if we're going to do this kind of business, you have to apprise yourself as to what the actual value is. So we give up certain things, but if the value we get in return is greater, then it's not so bad of an austerity. If I tell you I want you to do the Vrindavan Parikrama, you said, well, it's 12 kilometers. I said, but when you get to the end, you will get a kilo of gold and Krishna Prema. Now will you do it? This way, whether you're materially or spiritually motivated, the value is there. Now, if I say you get a rupee for doing it, now is it worth it?
Yes.
Yes? Spiritually, but if it's something else, let's take that and say, if you do this, I will give you a rupee. It's not worth it if it's, yeah, that's worth it even if you have to pay for it, because the spiritual value is, can I pay 100 rupees to do it? Yes, it's worth it. So we have to know what's worth it. Some people just don't like the austerities, but they do all kinds of austerities to get in their sense gratification. I saw that in the Parikrama, the one male dog was chasing the female, and every time he got too close, she like bit him, and he kept trying it again, bit, right? Because he has an idea in his mind, I will get some sense gratification. And even though he's getting bitten, he thinks, but I want this so bad that it doesn't matter if I'm really getting it, I'll just keep trying. You figure if you keep trying, it's going to come for sure, but not necessarily. So let's see what kinds of other austerities we can do and how much time. We'll save some time at the end for questions and go to. And these things mix together in the 16th chapter. It's mentioned so many qualities. And austerity is one of these qualities. These are the qualities of the the godly and the godless people. And each of these qualities makes the other one stronger. If you're not honest, it's going to be hard to be austere. And if you're not austere, it may be hard to be honest. What is the first qualification of a godless person that Krishna mentions in the 16th chapter? I'll give you a hint. It begins with F and rhymes with ear. What is it?
Fear.
But it's not fear. What is it? What? Fearless, yes. The first quality is not fear. The first quality is fearlessness. Now, how can we be fearless? Because if we know that Krishna is in charge of everything, then we know whatever happens has to be the best possible thing to happen. And we depend that Krishna seems to be running the universe okay, unless you want to make sure that the earth is like 93 million miles, which is about what, 300,000 kilometers away from the sun? Is that right? 300 million kilometers away. Now, which is a problem? If it goes to 200 million kilometers away, or if it goes to 400, which is a problem? Both. So are you able to keep it in the right orbit? Can you handle that? Or is that, as they say in America, that's above your pay grade?
Yeah.
Yes. So Krishna seems to be handling this. We shouldn't try to take this over. If Krishna's already doing this with a fragment of his energy, with all of we make a mistake in this, and it's a big problem for a lot of people. So we shouldn't try to control the world. We can't do it, and if we could, we just might make it worse. We see so many people trying to make policies, and quite often the solutions they have to problems are worse than the original problem. So we could go into a big list of those, but we won't. But we see that the things that nations do, they get scared of another nation, so they attack it. They do so many things. And they call this the blowback, that the reaction that happens from the thing they did is worse than the original thing that happens. It's like Pakistan bombed India. First they were shelling, and a few people were. First 10 million refugees came to India from Bangladesh. And Pakistan was upset. India did not want 10 million extra people. Then they were shelling every day and killing a couple people. India still did nothing, but when they bombed the major cities, then India retaliated and freed Bangladesh and then caused a ceasefire. So what Pakistan did to solve their problem, being mad at India, just made them lose Bangladesh. So all these performers know the meaning of sacrifice. Oh, we read that there. They're cleansed of sinful reactions. And having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. Because we taste a certain nectar. You know, if you're in the mode of ignorance, you can't taste the nectar in the mode of passion. In the mode of passion, you can't taste what's there in goodness. And in spiritual, there's even a finer nectar that's there available. And people don't think it exists because they haven't experimented with it. People don't think, things they have no experience of, people don't believe it exists. I remember I first came to Vrindavan, and I told these boys here about a freeway where you drive 100 kilometers an hour and there's no bicycles, no cross traffic, no animals. And the guy yelled for his friend. He says, listen to the story that American made up. Because if you've never seen it, that means it doesn't exist, right? If I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Let's accept that theory for a moment. Anyone have a cell phone? Can you see the microwaves that are going in the phone? Therefore, it doesn't work, right? According to that theory, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. According to that, the cell phone can't work. So that theory must not be correct. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So people have a hard time conceiving of things that aren't there. It's just like Thomas Edison was working on 2 new alternate technologies with his friend Thomas Edison. And his father told him he was a stupid child and none of it would ever happen. You know what the 2 technologies were? Electric wiring. Electric wiring, yeah, the wiring for electricity, and the light bulbs. People use those? Some people, right? Or most people use a kerosene lantern. But because it hadn't been used, he couldn't conceive of it being used. So the same thing with spiritual life. This nectar doesn't exist unless you've tried it. If you tried to tell people 200 years ago about a cell phone, they would think you were a Ksudy or a witch and you might get burned, right? But they have things, they say that the Inca kings used to talk to people in a mirror. Do you ever talk to people in a mirror? Yes. To someone that doesn't know, isn't that a mirror? If you've never seen something before, wouldn't that be a mirror? Yes? If you've never seen a cell phone and you see someone talking in it, you think they're talking in a mirror. So these things existed in past ages. But archaeologists don't like to think that in past ages things were more advanced because they don't want to do the austerity of keeping things from deteriorating. But things can deteriorate. You can't just imagine that there couldn't have been more advanced civilization in the past. They have cartoons of this in the future where they have these airplanes and cars, and they say, what are those? They says, oh, they say that people used to fly in those and drive in those, but I think it's just a story. I don't think they actually could drive vehicles and fly in them. So, you know, in the future, when it comes to Kali Yuga, they won't believe in cars and cell phones and airplanes because they won't experience them. Does that mean they never existed? Just like that road I told those, does that mean it didn't exist? Now you have such roads here coming to Vrindavan. So just because they didn't experience it. Now Prabhupada had this kind of vision though. Someone said, what did Prabhupada mean by this? And it said that we can use the different forms of communication for preaching, like television and radio and telephone, and even future forms of communication that come out. And he said, what does this mean? I said, well, that means that there are future forms of communication that we don't have now that will come out in the future, and we can use those. What didn't we have then? This was like in the 70s. What didn't we have then? Internet. That was an idea that came from science fiction TV shows. There was no reality of an internet or a cell phone. Such a thing did not exist. So Just because you aren't aware of it doesn't mean it can't exist. So when we get into the main austerities, we'll go to this and then we'll take some questions, and I'll ask you some questions on it. In the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he mentions things about austerities here. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances, not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements, as well as the body and the supersoul within, are to be known as demons. What kind of austerity is this? Is it goodness? It's ignorance. Those in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, and those in the mode of passion worship the demons. Let's see here. Tells us more about austerities. The sacrifice according to the direction of Scripture is in goodness. For some material benefit is in the mode of passion, and without any sacrifice or disregard for or remuneration to the priest is in the mode of ignorance. So here's some. The austerities and the divisions. The austerity of the body, and this shows us how each of these qualities make the others stronger. The austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmins, the spiritual master, and the superiors like father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence. So what are those 4 austerities? Someone name one of them? What is it? Cleanliness. So we see how each of these qualities, cleanliness, having to work to keep things clean, is an austerity, right? And if we're austere, it helps us to be clean. And what does simplicity mean? As opposed to duplicity. Duplicity, I tell you one thing, but I do something different. I say, on Friday, I will meet you outside the temple. You wait for me there till the kirtan is over. Why is that a problem? Why? Because it's 24-hour kirtan, it won't be over. So you're waiting a long time. So duplicity is saying one thing and doing another. Duplicity means one thing. I do what I say what I mean. That's the simplicity. Simplicity, cleanliness, celibacy. They love to hear about this in the American high school, right? In college. Do they? No. You know, so many people like to go out with bars. I don't know if it's too much to describe, but some of them don't want to be involved sexually with the same person twice. They go out to a bar on a Friday and they get one partner. They get rid of them, they get a different one on a different night. And then they go back next week and get a different one and send them away. Now, do they end up being more happy or more lonely? More lonely, because a lot of the relationship is the subtle part. When the people do the austerity of raising children and being good to each other, the exchange of love they have is more important than just having a physical exchange and then getting rid of the person, right? They say everything. Right? There's one, like the one politician said, when I needs you, I kisses you. When I don't, I kicks you. And that may be the way they are. When they say in India, too much devotion is a sign of a thief. Oh, I'll never disagree with you. You don't want someone who always disagrees with you, but someone who never disagrees, they want something from you. So, what was the other austerity in there? And what was the last one? Nonviolence. So what are some of the kinds of violence we can do? What violence goes on? What's that? Killing living entities? Robbing the store with a gun? They don't have many guns here, do they? In America, there's 350 million people. How many personal guns do they have in America? Not military guns, but personal. There's 350 million people in America. How many personal guns do the Americans have?
More than 50 million.
450 million. Many people don't have the guns. Some people have a pistol, a shotgun. In states like Texas and in Arizona, every pickup truck, there's a truck with a pickup part in the back, every one of them has a rifle in the back. Here it's very hard to get a gun, isn't it? You have to really prove you need it. There you just go and buy it. Some states make you wait 3 weeks while they check you out, and they complain that this is too long to wait. So threatening people with a gun or threatening talk, this is violence. Stopping people from having spiritual life, this is violence. Putting things out in advertising that just attracts people's mind, this is violence. Violence can be done in so many ways. Making up stories about people that aren't true, right? This is the duplicity. But you know what he did? And it's, hey, do you know what he did? Hey, he's got a gun, he's out to get you. He has a gun, he's out to get you. And then they both shoot each other. If this is found out, I'm not guilty of a crime, right? Because they shot each other, I didn't do it. Am I guilty of a crime? Yes, because I instigated it. If I hire him to kill someone, I'm a greater crime than him because I'm the one that thought of it, right? Just like Prabhupada arranges us to go do books. It's even a greater service that he did that than just to do it himself. Because it shows the intent to have the books distributed. The same way, when you orchestrate someone to do a crime, your intention is even stronger than the person that did it because you encourage them. So that's the austerity of the body. And I'm going to skip over to 16 and then come back to 15. Now we'll read it in the order. Does anybody know the austerity of speech?
Speaking was
It should be what?
Not agitating. Not agitating.
pleasant.
Not
I can't hear what they're saying.
Not agitating.
Not agitating to others? What's one of the 4 things? Truthful? What else?
Beneficial.
Beneficial, yes? And based on scriptural knowledge. You know, other people use this. If you Google, that's why some people say, well, if you want, you can just go to a library to find out information. Why do you need a computer? But if you go to the library and say, I want to find out what the austerity of speech is, they say, well, what book is it? Who's the author? If you just put in Google austerity of speech, this comes up. Do other people use this besides us? Yes, the Rotary Club uses that. They don't use scriptural knowledge, but they say it should be truthful, beneficial, pleasing, not harmful to others, and based on knowledge. I think the same thing. Of course, it all had to start with Bhagavad Gita. And since there's a lot of things that could be put in knowledge, the fact that Krishna includes this means it's important, because there's only 701 verses in the Gita, and not all of them are spoken by Krishna. So anything he included here, the Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses. On the Brahmaloka, it has 1 million. Prabhupada explains in purports that the pastimes of Krishna on higher planets are even more advanced because the people are more advanced there. So they have 1,000,000 verses in the Bhagavatam on Brahmaloka. That'd be hard to get a set of that, wouldn't it? 1,000,000 verses. So this austerity of speech must be important. So if we think before we put something on the internet and before we say it to others, if it passes this test first, is it true? If it's not true, should I say it? I say, tomorrow is Thursday. Should I say that? When should I say that? On Wednesday, that's right. And if it's not going to benefit anyone, like I could talk about the history of cricket. I don't know much about cricket. I know it's a sport. I know they have 11 players, and I know they have a funny-looking bat, and they have a wicket, but I don't know what a wicket looks like. That's all it is. So I couldn't really give much talk on the history of cricket. Don't even know what country it came from. But would that be beneficial? And you tell somebody something that should it be pleasing? It should be pleasing to the soul, so that if they don't get it right away, at least you know it's beneficial for them. But a lot of it's like Jayapataka Swami says in the Bhakti Vriksha groups, the people want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. Imagine if I say, you know, that's an interesting problem you're going through. Let's look through the Bhagavad Gita together, and we'll find some solutions for you, rather than, hey, stupid, I've been reading this Bhagavad Gita over 50 years, and I know what you should do, and you don't, so you should shut your mouth and open your ears. Even if it's true, it isn't helpful, right? Someone's giving me some instruction, I usually take a little electrolyte water here. I usually think they have a good reason. We were at the Madhuvan on this small road, and this one younger devotee came around the corner. There's a road here, and there's another road coming to there. And he says, get out of the street right now. I could have said, hey, I'm a Prabhupada disciple, or you're much younger than me. Instead, I thought I should just get out of the street, find out why later. And a couple seconds later, this bull came pulling this cart, running, and it would have filled the whole street. I would have gotten run over. So someone says, get on the ground quick. You know, you just do it first and find out later why it's being done. So this austerity of speech we should think about before they say this. Are there some people who don't think about this before they talk or print things or put it on the internet? Even some devotees? Some devotees believe in all kinds of conspiracy theories about what devotees did. And then the outside world, they create some more fake conspiracies. They just believe all that too. Is that a good idea? I believe the fake things in ISKCON, so that I might as well believe the fake things that are outside also, right? Is that a balance? No. It has to be checked. You know, what they think is going to be true and not. People make up all kinds of things. Even devotees make up things about other devotees. This isn't the austerity of speech. Somebody was saying to me 6 years ago that he was talking about all the nonsense things that this one Swami had done at the Ukraine festival. I said, I was at the Ukraine festival. That Swami wasn't even there. So if he wasn't there, he couldn't have done those things, could he? But they just had a whole list of stuff that had no basis in reality whatsoever. I was there. If he wasn't there, he didn't do the things. But still, sometimes they will spread these. People like to let you think they know something you don't. So if I make something up, then it's easy to say that I know something you don't, because it's not true. You didn't hear of it, right? So this does not work for the austerity of speech. And so the next austerity is satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. What does satisfaction mean?
Be content.
What?
To be content.
To be content that we're happy, we're happy with what we have. We're satisfied. Are you satisfied with this glasses? Yes, I'm satisfied. They do the job. You know, it's much better to try to be satisfied with what we have than always hankering for something else. And simplicity, again, see, these things each come along, is to say what you mean and mean what you say. Gravity means to be, it says here, to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. I get a little in the throat because they stuck the rubber tube all the way down to my stomach. But there's something too about being satisfied and accepted. They said just keep swallowing it, because if it's going down, you have to keep swallowing it. It went all the way down to here. And so it creates a little funny in there, but I got to see that everything was okay. So it's kind of an austerity, but I was able to check out the condition and see that it's fine. So we have to see that the austerities are worth it. It's like if I call you bad names, you won't like it. But if I say for every bad name I call you, I will give you 10,000 rupees. Say, hey, call me any bad name you like. So, it should be trained so they're always thinking of doing good for others. Those go together because if we're not detached from sense gratification, it's very hard for us to give care to others because we're so caught up in just the I, me, mine and how I can enjoy the senses that we can't be of any value to anyone else. I don't care about you. I want to get my senses satisfied. So it's very hard. So when we give that up and care about others, people notice that, and they see that we can do well for others. Plus, if we're doing all kinds of crazy things, nobody wants to hear from us. I remember I was in Calcutta, and this one person walks up, and he looked terrible. He says, you want to buy some morphine? I says, you take the morphine? He says, yes. I said, well, then I don't want it because I don't want to end up like you, because he looked in such bad shape, right? So if we're not doing well, people aren't going to want to listen to us, are they? We have to show some kind of example. Maybe we don't think it's perfectly, but we're sincere in our efforts. And gravity is just to make the short version. They have a saying in America that you ask someone the time of day, they tell you how to build a clock. You heard this before? You don't want the whole story, you just want enough. So being grave is to not have to say everything to everyone. Like someone insults you, you just go, well, that must be their problem. Or they must be experiencing some problem today. And you don't have to participate, you don't have to force them to like you, because that's another austerity mentioned in the 12th chapter. Krishna says that he for whom no one is put into difficulty and does not put others in difficulty is dear to me. So we become dear to Krishna when people insult us, but we don't have to retaliate. It's their problem. And what people think of us doesn't really matter. My daughter had to be young, and I would go places with my daughter and granddaughter, and people gave me dirty looks. Like I must have a very young, people come to my daughter and say, what are you doing with that guy? He's old enough to be your father. And she says, well, he should be. He is my father. Because I became a grandparent in my 30s. I looked like I was in my 20s. But I still look too old to have a baby with a 16-year-old girl. But they shouldn't just assume it, right? You might see three people together. It might be a man and his sister and a baby that belongs to someone else. They just assume it's a man, a woman, and their baby. So this is a gravity that we don't have to do this. We don't have to assume all kinds of things. And we don't have to worry what other people think. There's one devotee woman, she wrote a book called What Other People Think of Me Is None of My Business. They may think you're the most wonderful person. They may have so many bad ideas about you, but it's not your business to worry about. Your business is to make sure that you live up to your commitments and you do the spiritual practices you want to do. You're not judged by what people think about it. People see it in saffron, they go, those must be Buddhists. Does that make you a Buddhist? No, not at all. Self-control and purification of one's existence. You see how these all go together. It's pretty hard to have to become Krishna. So when we purify our nature, we become Krishna conscious. We purify our nature. So we see Thank you. Is that's what it is? Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, because the tube was down my throat. At least I know everything's down there. Things are known, like if you buy insurance or you make sure your car is taken care of. These are known expenses. You can buy these glasses and you'll get a bill later. I'm not telling you what it is now. Does that sound bad? Could be a rupee, it could be 10 crores. You don't know. So it seems austere to give certain things up. But we should know what the result is before we do something. It's like Krishna talks about in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. By deliberate spiritual intelligence, we should pull the mind away from less. Now, what does deliberate mean? What? Yes, it means more than that. It means that we've thought, just like the court, they make a deliberation. They come to a decision. They've deliberated on it. Sense gratification gives me this. Krishna consciousness gives me that. This does that. I've deliberated on just what I'm going to do. I've thought about it, and I've come to a decision. So, we can't just blunder into spiritual life. We need to come to a decision. At the time of initiation, the spiritual master is asking us for some things. Now, what could we describe these things as? He asks us to say regulative principles, and what would we call these? What? Promises? What else could we call them? Decisions, right? If you're going to make a promise, you made a decision to do it, right? They're decisions followed by a promise. I have made a decision. That's why you wait 6 months to make sure that you made a decision that this is what you want to do. And then you promise to follow on that decision. It doesn't work well if some days we do and some days we don't. It's like some days I breathe and some days I don't, right? It's not required to do it all the time. So we make a decision, and from that decision we make a promise. And then since we've deliberated and that's what we want, we figure out the ways and the means to do it. And people have different things. There's different ashrams. Some people can be a brahmachari and stay in the temple or take sannyas. Other people get a job and raise a family. but they stay true to these. So there's all some degree of austerity there. But still, the cost is a lot less than the price of suffering a reaction that you don't know what it is or when it's coming. It's like if I say I'm mad at you, I'm going to hit you twice. That doesn't scare you as much as I say I'm going to get you later, right? Because you don't know what that means. Am I going to slap you once? Am I going to beat you with a stick or shoot you with a gun? So this is what the sinful activity tag on them. We don't really know what's coming. And this is bad to purchase things without knowing what we're really going to pay for it. And that's what we deliberate. If I do these things, I please Krishna and the spiritual master. If I do these things, I pay a price, and yet I'm not sure what the price is or when I'll have to pay it. You show up, okay, you owe me right now, right? But my rent is due tomorrow. Nope, you owe me now. And the difference is sometimes they have trouble collecting on things. But if the karmic reaction is going to come, it collects then. So this is the cost of value. And it makes the austerity not so bad because we know that what we're getting in return is a lot more valuable than if we don't do it. So are there any questions or comments about this? I hope that was okay. I didn't really have any time to prepare much, but I found things in Bhagavad Gita that were helpful. Any comments or questions? Yes.
You mentioned about simplicity, that it is to
Yes.
say what you do and say what you mean.
Yes.
So we should,
Sim means one, do means two, right?
so how should we react if we face individuals who don't do what they say?
Well, don't take them serious. You don't wait for them to get a ride to go somewhere, right? Says, oh, I'm going to Radhakund. You wait for me, I'll give you a ride there. You don't have to like chase them down and explain to them the exact nature of their faults, but maybe you don't take them as serious as people who mean what they say. If I say I'm coming here for class and I don't come, if I say I'm coming to give you a ride or make you a meal, I don't do it. If I can't do it and say I can't cook for you, I can't be here, you know it. Or if I say wait for me outside, I don't show up. So you just don't take them so serious. You don't punish them, you don't beat them with sticks, but they aren't going to be the first people you call when you need someone to help you, are they? Because then you can't make sure. At least if you know they say what they mean. If they say, no, you're stupid, I'm not helping you, at least you know. But say, oh, no, I will be there tomorrow morning. So you just don't take them as serious. That's all. They aren't the first people you call. Just like when doing books. I asked one devotee, Pragosh, how do you do well at books? He says, I 10% of the time with the 10% that are most likely to buy. So when you make friends and close confidants, the people who are that way, you don't make them your closest friend. You can still be friendly to them, but you can't take them serious, can you? Right? If they say, oh, this is gold and it's not, then now you just can't take them serious. It comes when we make some expectation about them and we've decided these people are okay and yet they're not. Then we let down what our idea is. But when people show you who they are, you have to believe them, don't you? If people seem to be unreliable, you can't be surprised when they're unreliable, can you? If people do what they did before, you can't be surprised. People usually do what they did before. Should I be surprised if I go in the temple and Mangalarti and Panchagoda's there? Oh, look, should I be surprised? No, because he's there all the time, right? So if people, it's a figure, people are going to keep doing what they're already doing. If they show up on time, they probably will. If they don't, they probably won't. So you just don't take them so serious. You don't have them give you a ride to the airport, that's for sure. So you just don't put them at the top of the list. Like if you're selling products, you say, yeah, I really want these right now. Come to my house. Someone else, well, I'm not sure. Do with people? More than you'd expect, huh? Especially if your people are devotees, they should have read some of this stuff. The austerity of speech and simplicity. If Krishna is going to mention them, they must be important. I mean, other scriptures have volumes of things. He condensed so much into here. If simplicity wasn't important, he wouldn't have mentioned it. So the other thing is that we can be that way ourselves and we'll attract other people. I find like my godbrother Mukunda Datta. If I say, can you meet me at the restaurant at 1:45, he's right there at 1:45. If you can't go, he says, you can't go. So it's nice to, you just have to treasure the people who are dependable. And that's the first one you call, the first one you hang out with, first one you ask to meet somewhere. And you certainly don't say, oh, I'll wait for you and we'll go to the temple later. Because then you sit around waiting and they don't show up and you miss out on the temple or prasadam or something else. If you're going to something important, you have to make sure that people are reliable. Shall we stop there? Hare Krishna. We take prasadam now? What do you take for prasadam?
Some variety, depends.
Variety. All right. Thank you I hope that gave some good